Q&A time. Someone asked for another one, and I was like, didn't I just do one? And then I checked, and it was like 2 years ago. So, yeah, I guess we're due for another one. This is exclusively questions from Patreon, because there were actually a lot when I asked on Patreon, and I think a lot of good questions. Patreon first, and then I'll do another one answering questions from the YouTube community post thingy. So let's do it. What is your current stance on honey and beeswax? In ethical terms, I don't use them personally, but I don't think it's a big deal if people do, quite frankly. It's certainly not on the same level, anywhere near the same level in terms of harm as meat, milk, eggs. So I don't really get the vitriol I sometimes see from people towards almost vegans, people who eat vegan other than honey, or they use mascara or something with beeswax, particularly something like makeup, like mascara, something that you're probably not buying more than, once every few months? In practical terms, honeybees are not very good pollinators, actually. There are other species of bees that are much better. And you still have to grow sugar crops to replace their honey, so it doesn't really make much sense in environmental terms. And it's pretty easy to make waxes from vegetable oils. What is your favorite first-party Nintendo game on Switch besides Animal Crossing? I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but it's the one I've put the most hours into, like, by far. So that's weird, right? But yeah, I don't play it anymore. I just one day was like, nope, I'm done with it. And then I've logged in like twice since then for like a few minutes. It's just, I'm done. Even with the Halloween stuff, I don't care, man. I grew some pumpkins. They're cute. That's it. So I think it would be Mario Odyssey. I liked Luigi's Mansion as well, but it was pretty short. I kind of blew through that. And then I tried to play the extra stuff where you go through stages and you've got to clear all the ghosts. And I tried like the first level just playing like the single player, and it was impossible. It was so hard. So I think that aspect of it is probably pretty fun if you're doing multiplayer. But in terms of the story mode, yeah, it was fun. Just, kind of short. Whereas Odyssey just goes on forever. Like it feels like an infinite amount of power moons. And playing with Toddler loves the power moons. And with Odyssey, I kept going back and getting more power moons. I don't have anywhere close to all of them, but even after I beat the game, I kept playing for a long time. Whereas with Luigi's Mansion, I didn't quite get all of the, ghosts and some other things, right? I was like, yeah, I'll get all of them once I beat the game. And then I beat the game and I was like, nah. The same with the Paper Mario Origami King. Was like, I'll get all the toads once I beat the game. And then I beat the game, was like, nah. I guess Breath of the Wild would be my favorite. That game I put a lot of hours into, but I haven't played it on Switch. I got it on Wii U, so I guess that doesn't count. And favorite Switch game just in general is Hollow Knight. Like, just by far. I love that game. I still haven't beaten it. I got to the final boss. It's real hard. I don't want to do it. It's too hard. Where did your parents get your name from? My parents got my name from not Patrick Swayze, John Cameron Swayze. Not because they were a huge fan of John Cameron Swayze. He was a news anchor, I think, or commentator or something. He did Timex Watch commercials. There was like a tagline, something ticking, keeps on ticking, something like that. There is a little tiny part in Face in the Crowd, which is a terrific movie. And my mom was super duper pregnant and was like, that's it. That's the name I want. And that's it. That's the story. That's pretty boring. How would you describe your political ideology? Do you consider yourself a neoliberal? Yes. And not in the way that certain people on the internet describe neoliberal, which is just anything they don't like or just conservatism. I don't know what people who don't like neoliberalism think neoliberalism is. It's kind of weird. But yeah, I think I would describe myself as neoliberal. Do you believe society should retain the institution of marriage? I don't know. I think so. It's not something I've really looked into, honestly. So, yeah, I'm not sure if there's a compelling reason to cancel it. I think having some sort of unifier, particularly for people who have children and who live together, makes sense, but I don't think it necessarily has to be marriage in like the sort of Christian sense, I guess. And obviously we should treat unmarried couples better. I know it was a worry for my parents in terms of why they ultimately got married. They thought it would just be easier in terms of having children and having kind of equal rights when it came to children, because they were worried if they weren't married and they didn't have the same name, that like, what if one of us goes to the hospital and like my dad, for instance, wants to go see us, but they're not married, they have different last names, something like that. Like, could that be an issue? And absolutely, that has happened. But I think things have improved a lot, and a lot more people even people who are married, do not have the same last name. So I think that's been normalized to some degree. And obviously, like, not discriminating against same-sex couples. I mean, maybe that's the weird thing for me. Gay people have not had the right to marry for very long. So it feels weird to just be like, let's get rid of it. You know what I mean? It's like, what? They just got this. What's your opinion on the practice of newborn male circumcision? Oh shit. It's getting serious now. I'm not a doctor, so my opinion should not matter that much, shouldn't hold much weight. Basically, I turn to the medical community and consensus within the medical community. Currently, that is circumcision has minimal risks. It has some benefits in terms of urinary tract infections, so it should be available to parents who want it for their child. In philosophical terms, obviously, we're dealing with someone who cannot consent. They can't say one way or the other, but I don't think babies themselves have much of a preference, and it doesn't seem like most men, the vast majority of men, regret it, at least where it's culturally normal, so like in the US. However, this could change. Circumcision rates in the US have declined slightly over the years, and that trend could certainly continue. It looks like millennials are much less enthusiastic about the practice than boomers. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see even less circumcisions in the coming decades, and subsequently even more circumcised men who are unhappy about it, simply because they've met more intact men. So it's more normalized. And so, maybe they feel like they're missing out, so to speak. And American women will probably be more used to it, right? Because again, it's more normalized. There's a higher chance that they have been exposed. It's a weird way to word it. Exposed to uncircumcised men. More uncircumcised men means it's more normalized. Personally, I think the cultural aspect to this is the most important thing in terms of whether or not someone is going to be happy or unhappy with the procedure being performed on them as an infant. So if circumcision rates do keep declining, I do think that is a pretty good argument against circumcision, at least in the coming decades. Because again, in terms of the medical benefits, they're pretty small. I would worry a lot more about the cultural, psychological aspect of it. What are your favorite fiction books or favorite fiction genres, authors, etc.? Stephen King's Dark Tower, I love very, very, very much. I have read it numerous times. I have not read it in a few years. Part of that is because my mom died and she read it as well. And so, I don't know, the thought of picking it up again makes me real sad. And so I don't know if I can really handle it, But part of it too is like, maybe it's not as good as I remember. Maybe I should just, I have this kind of strong belief that if you watched movies, for instance, when you were a child and you didn't keep watching them, like as you grow up, don't go back and watch them. Don't. Keep those memories. Keep those lovely memories of that movie or that show that you have and leave it, because it's probably going to be, at least in my experience, oh man, it's going to be a letdown, right? So yeah, I think I feel the same way with books. So I don't know if I'll ever try it again. I didn't see the movie, the adaptation, but apparently it was real special. Discworld, I have read, I think the first 6 or 7 books. I started, I think soon after we moved to Portland, I think is when I started reading them. I started amassing them from Powell's, and they are so good. I just started from the beginning. There's lots of different ways you can go about reading them, but I just started from book number 1. And like I said, I think I've read the first 6 or so, and they are just so good. The only Terry Pratchett thing I read before that was Good Omen with Neil Gaiman. Speaking of Neil Gaiman, The Sandman is incredible. I love it so much. That is something I know I can read again because I read it later in life. And I have I think I've read through those twice, so I definitely want to go through those again. I have them. I think they're upstairs in my attic. What cat food do you recommend? I love these. They're like all over the place. This is fun. The cheap kind made with byproducts instead of like human grade meat, I think is overall better. Kibble is better because normally it's made with a lot of grain in addition to meat, mostly grain, but obviously that's an issue, and a lot of vets don't recommend kibble at all for cats because they're just so bad at drinking water. You might be able to do a mix of like a canned meat cat food with one of the vegan kibble brands to again reduce the harm, but I don't really trust like any of the vegan pet brand companies. I wouldn't feel super comfortable with that, and they're so expensive, so it's probably better to just go with the canned cat food or a mix of canned and just regular, dry cat food. But of course, talk to your vet. How much a month does your family spend on food? So if we're not ordering any takeout, like $600 a month. My Nugo bars, which I have one of those every day. It's not exactly cheap. Lots of mock meats, you guys know, and all this specialty vegan stuff that we buy. And fruit. We buy a lot of fruit, especially right now. I guess that'll change pretty soon, but I'm getting the keep mangoes and the pineapple and the cantaloupe and tomatoes, and yeah, man, that stuff adds up. With takeout, it's like a couple hundred more than that. With COVID, we decided to increase that to support local vegan businesses because we don't want them to close. That would suck ass. When you are doing research and forming an idea/opinion, do you talk to someone, some group, before making a video about it? Not usually. Sometimes my partner, but it's more, hey, what should I make a video about? Help me find a topic, please. And they do watch the video once I finished it before I publish it. And they do the thumbnails as well. So yeah, it's a family operation over here. Little family business. Anthony Magnabosco uploaded a video recently talking about veganism, but it was pretty weak. Have you considered doing a virtual SE discussion with him? So SE is street epistemology, for those who don't know. I've watched some of his videos in the past. He does street epistemology, where he goes up to people. I think it's typically on a campus. I forgot what campus, but he asks people questions about religion and just has conversations with people and tries to get them to think about their own beliefs. They're very good. They're very interesting. So yeah, that's disappointing that he, well, according to this person anyway, would have some weak views on veganism, but I haven't seen it. But yeah, in terms of doing a virtual sort of discussion, I don't really do live chat or collaboration type thingies, but I will try to remember to watch the video, and if I think it's good to make a response, then I'll make a response. What do you do if your kids get presented something non-vegan, for example, at school or at a friend's party? That actually has not happened yet. I get questions like this a lot. COVID has made it pretty hard for toddler to go out and spend time with kids and really have that opportunity. So yeah, we haven't experienced that yet. We're just starting to really explain things to toddler in terms of what we eat and what other people eat and what vegan means. Actually, I guess spoiler, I just bought a bunch, so many little vegan kids books, board books and whatnot, going through those and reading them, and hopefully I'll have a kind of video review of the books maybe in the next few weeks or so. I want to read them several times with toddler and tiny baby. Tiny baby doesn't know. They don't know what's going on, but specifically with toddler. And yeah, and I'll have a little review, my thoughts on how they kind of handled the material. Like it's a textbook. Hopefully I'll have that up soon. And if you guys have any specific recommendations for vegan or vegetarian kids books that you like, let me know. What about a school excursion to the zoo? So many zoos actually have free admission for school field trips, so that wouldn't be a problem. We'd talk to them, and if they wanted to go, fine. If they didn't, fine, and just kind of, talk to them about the implications and the problems with zoos. Our zoo, they don't offer anything like that, any free admission to schools. So yeah, we're not doing that. We're not paying for that. But I don't know, maybe we'll offer to set up something fun for our kid and any other kids who don't want to go to the zoo, maybe farm sanctuary visit, I don't know, something like that. We're in Portland, so that wouldn't be too surprising that there are other kids who don't want to go, other kids who are vegan, but I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. How do you feel about environmental issues, workers' rights, and fair trade? I know this isn't the focus of your channel, but you have talked about getting rid of petroleum from items. Palm oil may be environmental or more likely animal concerns. Oh, how I feel about palm oil. Yeah, okay. I get what they're saying. So I care very much about environmental issues, but from an individual standpoint, it's hard. It's hard from a consumer standpoint to really know the environmental impact of a product, of the production of a product. There's no like ingredient list for carbon footprint, right? I definitely think that the burden has to be placed on companies, honestly. I think we need a carbon tax system that incentivizes them to clean up their acts. In terms of human rights and fair trade, obviously, human rights, very, very important. And the idea behind fair trade is wonderful, but even more nebulous, I think, than environmental impact of a lot of products. I personally, for instance, would not buy diamonds. However, it's also pretty easy to cause trouble in developing countries by inflating the price of goods. So it's really something that has to be done competently. You really have to look at anything labeled fair trade on its own, like on a case-by-case basis. I don't really regard fair trade one way or the other, to be honest, because I just don't know if it's harmful or helpful. Palm oil, I think, is one of those outliers where the damage, both environmentally and for animals, is pretty clear. With most plant foods, that's just not the case. Who do you look up to in the vegan movement? Not a hero or anything, but someone who is doing good work. There are a lot of people I think are doing good work, but obviously it's not, it's impossible to tell for sure. Kind of talking about the same thing in terms of fair trade and environmental impacts of all the products we consume. Often hard to know exactly what the impact will be. I think in vitro meat is a good example of that. My outlook is very positive regarding in vitro meat, but I don't know for sure. But yeah, generally I support Bruce Friedrich and the Good Food Institute. I've talked about them numerous times. We donate money to them. We have for the last couple years or so in terms of our charitable giving. So yeah, I pretty much trust them to do my homework for me. I also really love Ishitatar and New Harvest. I actually just donated money to them in exchange for a mask, a really sweet in vitro meat mask, clean meat mask. It's honestly incredible. I couldn't believe it. It doesn't make my glasses fog up. It's the only mask I've used so far that doesn't, and I haven't even like adjusted it or anything. So yeah, that's pretty great. You said you majored in philosophy in one of your videos. What did you write your bachelor's/master about? I did major in philosophy, but it was only undergrad, so you don't do a thesis for undergrad. On that note, why did you pick philosophy and why didn't you continue your studies even further? Looking back, what field would you have picked other than philosophy, presuming there are no restrictions? Also, who is or are your favorite philosophers? I took an intro to philosophy class and I enjoyed it a lot more than accounting. Actually, my boyfriend at the time who took the class with me was like, "You're really good at this. You should major in philosophy, like really." And for some reason I listened to him. Why didn't I continue my studies further? Because school is awful. I hate school in any form, elementary, middle, high school, college. I just despise all of it. Honestly, by the end, I was pretty jaded when it came to my philosophical studies. I personally did not find them particularly useful. The ethics class was a huge letdown for me, and the other classes I enjoyed. It was almost like a history of philosophy, the way that it was taught and the way that we engaged with the material. So I was pretty done. With philosophy by the end of my college experience, which brings me to the other question: what field would I have picked other than philosophy? Anthropology, absolutely. That ended up being my minor because I enjoyed it, particularly this class on ancient civilizations. I absolutely loved it. I loved the professor. Some of the cultural anthropology classes were don't criticize other cultures, that sort of thing, and a little like almost like reverent of other cultures simply because, a little bit of the kind of noble savage type stuff. So yeah, that was a little weird. Who is or are your favorite philosophers? Peter Singer, of course, Bentham and Mill, David Pearce, Adam Smith even, Aristotle, Confucius. There's a lot, honestly. And some I enjoy reading just because I like the way they write. I like some of the French existentialist stuff, honestly, because it's just kind of fun, even though I don't necessarily agree with like Simone de Beauvoir, for example. Why/how did you and your partner decide to have kids? Since you didn't want kids in your 20s, I'd be interested in your views on bringing children in this world. I sometimes feel guilty about wanting a child since there are so many people in this world. I don't think you should feel guilty. There really aren't too many people in the world. That is a major myth. I think there are a lot of good reasons to have children. Probably the simplest, I guess, is to maintain the population. We actually want to maintain our population economically. We don't want to end up like Japan with a declining population. It causes huge problems. On that note, Matthew Iglesias just published his book, 1 Billion Americans, argues that there should be 1 billion Americans. And yeah, very interested to read that. In terms of wanting kids, I actually did want children in my early 20s. I had like severe baby fever, but I fought through that and I got over it, and then didn't want kids for several years, and then changed my mind like a lot of people. I think it's pretty common to not want kids in your younger days and then change your mind. I think usually because you meet someone who you can see yourself having kids with, and makes you want to have kids. I personally changed my views a lot in terms of the impacts of having children, and decided that it was a pretty positive thing to do, probably a positive thing to do. And I was pretty sure I'd be a good mom. I've always been good with kids. I've generally liked spending time with kids, except for teenagers. Teenagers are evil and horrible and scary. But yeah, that time I didn't have baby fever. It was like a totally sober, I guess, decision. And yeah, partner wanted the same. And so here we are. Does your house have a garden? If so, do you grow any food? I'm also interested in your favorite flowers and or houseplants. Do you have any? I would love to see a home tour someday, smiley face. No home tour, sorry. Just not, that's just not going to happen. Not comfortable with that. We don't have any houseplants. Partner would love that. I don't like houseplants. I don't really like outdoors. And so I want as little of outside in my house as possible. I want this to be a safe space of not dirt. We do have a few plants outside. We have strawberries right now. We've got several strawberry plants that make these tiny strawberries throughout like the whole year, I think. The kids love them. I think maybe because they get to see them being picked, and they help us get them and whatever. But they've got like intense strawberry flavor, but like no sweetness. It's super weird. But yeah, they like them. So whatever. That's great. We think maybe we're going to try to do a little pumpkin patch next year for the kids, because like everyone around us grows squash and pumpkin. So I guess they grow really well out here. What is your ideal day? COVID/non-COVID times. So I actually had partner write this for me. I'm going to see what he thinks my ideal day is. Baby sleeps in until 8 a.m. Yes. Instead of 7? Yes, absolutely. I work out, shower, then work while partner takes the kids outside. My ideal day, I work? No. Then I have a nap and play video games or go out with the kids in the afternoon. We get takeout, so I don't have to cook anything. Yes, sir. They eat all their dinner. Yes. They go to bed and I watch a good movie with partner and eat popcorn, and followed by a new flavor of ice cream, bubblegum ice cream. He knows me too well. That's pretty good, minus the working part and going out with the kids. Oh, going out. Yeah. We go somewhere. We go to like Target or something with the kids. That is so sad. Or Powell's and like reading books in the little kids section. And I get a new Discworld book. If you had to pick one food item to eat for every meal every day for the rest of your life with no negative health consequences, deficiencies don't exist in this scenario, what would that food be? That's hard. I'd say like peaches or candy or gum. Whatever I choose, I'm going to get sick of it and it's going to be hell. It's going to be terrible. Now, if it was like two things, if I had like one sweet and one savory, like peaches and Pringles or something, that might be amazing. And I'm going to have to do the rest of this later because toddler has a dentist appointment. I thought I'd be done by now. I'm not. And we're back, and I think there's only 2 questions left. You support GMOs, pesticides, and intensive farming as it is the most effective option, but what about its long-term effects on the quality of soil? GMOs don't really do anything to the soil aside from improve yield. I mean, the more fruits and vegetables you're taking away, technically the faster you are depleting the soil, but it's still in proportion to food production. I have a video on GMOs already, but there has been progress since then that highlights, I think, more than ever how important this technology is to agricultural productivity and ultimately global health. This recent RCT on BT eggplant in Bangladesh is incredible. However, the whole, soils is such a huge problem. I think that's pretty much a myth, and I think it's easy to see if you think about it really in terms of how we think about human health and diet and veganism. As vegans, many of us know that it's not the source of the nutrients that matters, it's just the nutrients. We need certain nutrients to survive, but it doesn't matter if we get those from meat or from plants. In the same way, plants need certain minerals, they need certain amounts of water and air, but it doesn't matter the source of those nutrients. Deficient soil can be amended, soil can be recreated, and really, soil isn't even fundamentally necessary. The biggest concern seems to be phosphate in topsoil, a loss of phosphate in topsoil, which is replaced with ground up high phosphate rock. But that's not the only source, it's just the cheapest and the easiest. If soil is low in something, then you add more in. And if it's a mineral and the mine you're getting it from is running low, then you switch to the next best source. Or once it becomes financially viable, you switch to a more sustainable source. We just don't do that now because it's a lot cheaper and easier to mine it. This was a reply talking more about GMOs and sustainability. Interested in your thoughts on sustainability and any efforts aside from veganism to be more sustainable at an individual level. Eating mostly plant-based is like the most important thing on an individual level. Other than that, it's just really hard to gauge the actual impact. Driving less is another one. You can try to choose more paper and biodegradable packaging for slightly lower impact. I think a lot of us are becoming more familiar with the unfortunate fact that recycling isn't all that useful, at least the way it is now, single stream. Again, this is where I think government regulation has to come into play. We have to apply pressure through regulation and carbon taxes. Urban planning is huge. We need denser and more walkable cities to make cars less of a necessity, and we need transportation and distribution systems to be more efficient. Unless you're an urban planner or on city council or something, there's just not a whole lot you can do there other than vote. Again, if you can make better choices in terms of your own transportation, public transportation, biking, electric car. But it sucks, we're largely limited by urban planning, which just as an individual is rough, and often living in the city where you don't need a car is a lot more expensive than living 30 minutes out where you need a car, which could be helped again by, less regulation. We need more housing. We need to build more housing. Renewable energy, same thing. It's not like you can build a nuclear power plant in your backyard. Maybe you can get solar panels. We don't have any now personally, and I don't know if we'll ever end up getting some. We do have the most green appliances, efficient appliances that we could find. And we do now have a used electric car, which is pretty cool. But yeah, aside from being mostly vegan or even just half vegan, which virtually all of us can do, pretty much all of it comes down to voting for good policies and hoping the powers that be fix it eventually. In theory, you could do a lot of small things that could add up. Something like taking cold showers. Again, it's small by comparison to eating plants, but if you're doing that, composting, keeping the lights off in your house, all these little things adding up could potentially add up to a lot, but it's a lot of little things you're doing. So, depends on your own situation, I suppose. But for me, cold showers, I gotta draw the line somewhere. And I think that's it. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe, support the channel, patreon.com/unnaturalvegan, onlyfans.com/unnaturalvegan, where I post little random things, whatever is going on, whatever I want to talk about. Like I said, I'll have another one of these answering the general YouTube answers to the postie that I made, the postie. Thanks again. Really hope you enjoyed it, and I should have that up fairly soon. Toddler's teeth were great, so I feel really good. I feel really proud of myself as a mom. The dentist seemed like genuinely, happy with how things were going in terms of she was like, there's no staining or anything, and we got a little like report card and everything was in the green, and yeah, she seemed really like, yes, good job. Which, yeah, I guess I'm not surprised, It's, especially if your kid doesn't like brushing. Toddler is really, really good about it. Tiny baby, not so much. Not so much yet. They're okay with the top, but the bottom teeth, they just push their tongue out like as soon as the toothbrush touches, they're like, nope. So we're still working on that. But yeah, toddler's really good about, 1 minute on the bottom, 1 minute on the top. My point is, if you've got a kid who's not, man, yeah, it's rough. But I was just so happy to hear that we're doing a good job, Feels good.